Live. So, welcome to all the listeners. This is once again your host Shailesh from New Zealand World News, and today we have the privilege to invite our guest speaker, Green Party candidate from Mount Roskill, Suveen. Welcome,
Giver.
Suveen, to this wonderful episode that we are going to do, and we'll be uncovering a lot of things because this is an election year. And so, to all the listeners, first of all, I would like to encourage everyone to take your time to actually make sure that you vote. You vote, and whether you vote this party, that party, this person, that person, it's not the importance. It's your exercising your right is important to vote, and you should vote because that is where you will make a difference to yourself, not to any political party. So with that, I would like to open up this discussion with Suveen, who is our guest speaker today. And we have heard some lot of good policies coming up from all the political parties. But today we are going to discover what is Green Party and what is Suveen and who is he and what he wants to bring to this country to build this nation, which he has taken the first step of standing as a candidate to make a difference. So welcome, Suveen. Tell us something more about you in your
About
person.
me? Yeah, kia ora, Shailesh. First off, thank you for having me on. Kia ora to all the listeners who are with us today. In terms of, say, who I am, so yeah, born in Sri Lanka, came to Aotearoa at a very young age, and I'm currently working as a support worker for Kahui Tukaha. So it is an iwi-run funded housing and mental health trust. And I'm in the social housing space, but I previously was also in the community mental health space in South Auckland. But I come from a background of 8-9 years working across logistics, digital, and startups as well.
Oh, fantastic. Gives me a good overview of your socialist thoughts and also some of the thoughts that you are involved directly into the communities, which is really awesome, which is really good. And this is what we want our nation to build communities, but also grow communities. So on that note, I wanted to talk about today about your political parties, policies, visions. And I know Green Party has always been there for a long time, but let's talk today this election. What is so different for this election, according to you, that your party and yourself are going to contribute? Tell me something about that. Tell us.
So with this election, what our party hopes to contribute is breaking the staleness that I feel people are feeling, especially within the two big parties. When what we're seeing is not matching what our realities are, what we're feeling in our pockets, what we feel within our families.
Yeah.
We know the realities are connected to quite systemic problems and therefore require systemic solutions when it comes to party policy. But what we're seeing within this election is basically the same old tax cuts or same old small promises that aren't going to make the dents required to actually resolve the issues that we're facing on the ground.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have seen the polls and you are really going up as a party political polls that recently went. But in polls is one thing, but really thing is the candidates, the people that you are working with, and also your own political party's visions. So we have got tell us something about the key policies that you think will make a huge difference in regards to your political parties' policies that they have already discussed and they have already, presented to the people.
So when it comes to policy, the point of federal policy is to look at, okay, where are the biggest inequities or issues that we need to resolve? What is the type of policy that will take us huge amount further in resolving that? So I was very happy to see, how we rolled out, first and foremost, the inequity within our tax system.
Right.
And therefore providing a fully costed out wealth tax and how it's only going to be affecting the top 0.7% of the population.
Right.
So if you're not in the top 0.7% of the wealthiest people in Aotearoa, you do not have to worry about this tax affecting yourself.
Right.
But what we've calculated out is through this tax, we're able to provide free dental care for all. So expanding our public health system in that sense, providing a universal basic income in terms of, sorry, a universal minimum income. So everyone, no matter what your circumstance is, you have a minimum amount to be able to get by. And then
is that something like what is called now under the UBI? You said that income support scheme or income support, something like that. ISG, income support.
So it's a little bit different to the UBI, but it's because it's a minimum basic income. Right. So making sure that every individual has a certain level that is enough for them to get through. It's a bit different to the universal basic income where every individual gets a certain amount. Yeah. So I guess for us as a party, we wanted to make sure that no matter what your circumstance is, making sure we're simplifying the support schemes within Ministry of Social Development to make sure that, okay, if you're a student, postgrad, someone who's struggling on the benefit, whatever your circumstance, there is a minimum amount that you are entitled to. And that amount is fully costed out and paid for through a wealth tax of the 0.7% of the population. Right. And then that links into our other policies such as free school lunches and of course the increase in support for families as well. So doubling that payment for supporting families. So there's that suite of policies that is fully costed out. Just want to emphasize that because other parties seem to be struggling on that sense.
Sure. But I wanted to ask you on that, like, okay, that's good that it's costed out and it could work with your taxation policy. But where is this money going to be literally going to be spent on? Like when you tax this, all this income that is generated through tax, what are the other things that you're going to spend on? What are the policies or that other policies that you have come up? Is it something like you're going to pay dental free, which I heard? Is that what is going to be paid through this channel of what you collect? And what else other like school lunches, as you said, all those things will be paid, social policies will be all taken care by this revenue? Are you saying that? Kind of?
So it's a huge amount of that. So I would have to say, yeah, so in terms of the revenue generated through that, it does provide that, but also recognizing we already do have a lot of other revenue streams as well. So it's not.
Understood. I understand your other revenue streams are also there, but I wanted to just know that, okay, what are your policies that will make a difference to the people? So one is inequity by taxing, you are trying to reduce the inequalities. That's what I could feel.
Yeah, so through that wealth policy, it was about recognizing, look, when we talk about poverty, it is a political choice.
Yeah.
So the fact that we don't have something like a wealth tax or even a capital gains tax, if we did implement it, what we've calculated is, and it's not a very radical wealth tax, I just want to emphasize that. Yeah. What we costed out is we are actually able to provide outcomes such as ending poverty, essentially. If you are able to actually calculate, you are able to provide this amount that we know is sustainable for any individual at the moment to be living within Aotearoa through this policy, through that income generated, then it is a political choice not to implement it. And I think the best example of that reality is the Revenue Minister himself, David Parker.
Yes.
When Labor decided not to implement some form of wealth or capital gains tax.
Absolutely.
You know, this is a very experienced minister through the Helen Clark government, through Jacinda and now Chris Hipkins. Yes. Just saying, look, I can't do my job as Minister of Revenue if these policies aren't implemented, and resign from that portfolio. That is the reality that we face. So therefore, it is a political choice not to implement it. And people can vote for that through the Green Party.
Yes, understand. And that makes sense because it's all the hard work that was done to understand the data and all that from the proper source, which is the IRD, which really makes sense. Then it's a matter of implementation. So that's why it's a question like, reformation, like you have to be bold enough to reform if you have identified a problem. So I want to come back to that child poverty or poverty eradication, which you were mentioning, that your goal, ultimate as your party goal is to eradicate poverty. I remember Jacinda started that during her tenure recognizing that there is a child poverty, recognizing there is a poverty, and we got to do something about it, which is what then she kept on doing. But now you are also making a statement that your party is like, we want to completely zeroed out the poverty. And so for that, what's your, how are you going to do that basically? Is it like the school lunches, the free lunches that has been started will continue? And then how will you minimize that options that you have currently? When will you think about stopping that, what you have already doing it? So is there a goal of 5 year, 10 year, or what sort of thing you have in your mind, or your party has got in your mind basically to eradicate this poverty? There are lots of measures, right, to eradicate poverty. It is not just school lunches or free lunches. There is a lot of things that we need to remove.
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear a little bit of sound interference there from, I think that's the wind, so I'm just going to close the window. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. There we go. So, okay, so first off, making sure that people have that income, so 385 per week, in order to, pay your rent, groceries, just the absolute basics. That's the floor. Now, this is something even the Productivity Commission in their report, when one of their main recommendations is, okay, you want to lift the economy, you want to lift productivity, you got to raise the floor. So first off, acknowledging those fundamentals. Right. And then what you do in order to, build on top of that is that free dental, strengthening our public health sector. And then in terms of the support when it comes to the development of our tamariki, our children, that is where the school lunches come into play. And then that links into families as well, that best start payment, doubling that, acknowledging the struggles it is to raise a family within Aotearoa, that what's provided at the moment is not enough. And this is how much doubling it essentially is what's going to alleviate that. So by raising that floor to 385 a week, then on top of that, that free dental for everybody. And then on top of that, the school lunches, and then the best start payment for families as well. So that's the suite of policies. And then on top of that, of course, we have the warrant of fitness for renters, making sure renters' rights are strengthened. These are the main inequities across the nation. And the fact, I'm very proud that the Green Party has acknowledged that and managed to put forward the bold policies required to tackle the main inequities within this country.
Right. Yeah, no, you made a good point about that rent, and which is also has been talking a burning issue for a long time, that how do you make that inequity minimize, or minimize the risk of all that which was ballooning up. The inequality in New Zealand has gone to skyrocket, like top of the roof. I don't think to come down, there has to be lots of measures to be taken, reformative measures, rather than anything small measures. And I think this one of your, does your policy also includes in that tax a threshold of first 10,000 something that you don't have a tax? Does that include that as well? Okay.
That's included. So that's an acknowledgement of the fact that we don't have that threshold that other countries have. And it is an acknowledgement of the dynamic of how much we tax paid work, as opposed to what we aren't taxing, which is the capital gains, and especially within our property market and how that's set up in terms of the inequity. So yes, so that threshold of $10,000 of tax-free is a vital aspect of addressing that dynamic.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good thing, and good acknowledgement once again that what's going around in our neighboring countries, and how they are managing their tax policies, and how they are managing the economy, and how they are managing the inequity that we face from every country. There are dynamics are different. But in New Zealand, what do you see like these reformative measures that your party has taken? It's a good thing, capital gain tax, wealth tax, and then also threshold of 10,000 that you don't pay tax any. Will that also be enough at this cost of living crisis that we are facing currently? Is that, and that is again, next question is again, is that going to be implemented straight away, or will it take a couple of years to implement? What's your
I mean,
policies?
in terms of implementation, it's very contextual to the government that we find ourselves in. But
Yes,
what
of
we
course.
can talk about is the direction
Hmm.
on policy direction, and that is something that you can vote for. So you
Right.
know, with the Green Party vote, this is the direction and the things that we will be pushing
Yeah, sure.
within government. And sorry, yeah,
Yeah. So which means what you are saying that, yeah, it could be implemented, but that's not for you, that's not issue, but you know, these are the recognized issues that you want to put it forward so that it can minimize. But do you think the inequality, the way that it has been identified by IRD reports,
mm,
the huge gap in the inequity, do you think by this will all your policies that this currently that you're putting it, particularly the in CGT and the wealth tax, based on that? And I know I don't want to go into other political parties, what they are doing, but in terms of what you had agreed, like, the foreign example, the foreign buyers for property buying, because that was one of the also was identified as cause for the inequity, because richer were getting rich, wealthier were getting wealth.
mm.
Do you what's your party will support that stand that is continued still, that they won't allow the foreign buyers at this stage to come in and get reverse the policy?
Yeah, I think that's an important
Mm,
aspect,
mm.
making sure that the
Yeah,
foreign, I guess, speculative buyers that
speculative, yeah,
that utilize the New Zealand property market, I guess, to hide. So
yeah,
there's a dynamic when it comes to foreign buyers, but what we won't overturn that. But what we can do and vote for, especially, is something I do want to emphasize:
mhm,
how we front load in terms of, say, what we invest in. So especially when it comes to dental care, when it comes to making sure that rental properties are up to scratch, these are the ways that you invest in our communities up front to make sure that there aren't liabilities down the line. So there's been multiple studies on every dollar that we invest in dental
yes,
provides
yes,
us with the savings, about, I think, $4 savings down the line. The negligence of people not looking after their dental because of the cost in the beginning costs us down the line. And I think across all sectors, even when it comes to the minimum basic income or investing in our rental markets, we know the amount of people that are consistently getting sick through damp, moldy homes is a cost down the line. It's just about recognizing, even at the most basic economic terms, the investment upfront required in order to save us money down the line.
sure. Sure. So no, I totally agree that the dental is the key for the health, but also lots of things because of dental and because of our health that we are spending so much money on health,
Mm,
particularly when it comes to, dental or diabetic or health issues, obese and all of that. We
mm.
are spending too much. But then that could be also one of the cause could be also the dental aspect, which is right from the childhood. If you don't look after, then there are a lot of multiple issues come out of that, basically. But how would you like rate, or how would you say that just wealth tax, income tax, and all that, that's great. But don't you think at some point we should be also thinking about sugar tax? I'm just bringing up this as a food for thought for you to think over and for your party to think over about. Like, what was your views on the sugar tax? Because that could be an easy tax that can be taxed, and it was worked in other countries as well. So, what
Yeah,
your view? And that will also reduce the health that we are spending on health sector, a lot of money that can reduce, because once the sugar is less, then obviously all the other issues like the diabetic, the obese, and
mm.
all of that are
But
to.
and I think like taxes are very, that's one measure within government in order to decentivize. But in terms of the root causes of why we have a lot of people,
Yeah,
eating sugar, then it comes down to, okay, what are the root causes? Is it regulation? Is it education? Is it the infrastructural affordability and access to fresh fruit and vegetables? There are a number of other measures that I feel need to be explored before We just
Sure.
look at simply a sugar tax. But that is simply, that is a valid measure. But I think when it comes to that problem, it deserves to have a bit of a deep dive into, okay, what are the different measures that deserve to be, I guess, recognized as possible policy as well.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I guess like because when we are comparing with other international countries to take some of the leaf from there, whatever policies that we try to compare. So just like recent announcement, which I heard about immigration policy, and I wanted to touch on that a bit little, that what's your Green Party is going to do in terms of immigration? Is that any policies that you have? Because recently both Labour National, they want the visitor visa for grandparents, parents to be almost similar foot. Like one is saying 5-year multiple, one is saying 10-year multiple visa. Is there any Green Party's policy on immigration?
So it's very interesting to see the dynamic of different parties' policies on immigration when it doesn't actually, I don't think any of them have actually decided to explore the migrant exploitation aspect, the struggles of the migrant experience.
Yes.
So from the Green Party perspective, I will speak on, the amount of advocacy and work during the last 3 to 4 years we've done on the ground. So when it comes to political work, it's stuff that Ricardo, the current List MP who I worked with on the Pathways to Residency campaign, that's 3-4 years we were on the streets collecting signatures for a petition. We were on the front lines of protest, collaborating with community groups as well. So that's political work. That's 3-4 years of political work that actually created an outcome of the R21, 150,000 people being granted residency. That's what political work from migrants looks like. And I think that's what we need to be talking a lot more about. And now we have the dynamic of the migrant exploitation, which is horrendously political. To have a working visa tied to a single employer is pretty much foundation of exploitation. If your well-being, your housing, your right to be in a country is tied to a single employer, that is essentially a dynamic of exploitation. And then especially when they decrease the accreditation, I guess, benchmarks, and they weren't doing proper checks, so it wasn't funded fully to meet that demand, that's a political choice too. So the political choice to not have open visas, if you have the skills to come to Aotearoa, you deserve to choose where your skills will be. So having that freedom of choice of employer, the political choice to not fund the checks, that is a political choice as well. And how temporary immigration is utilized as a tool to artificially increase our GDP without properly investing within our own. And how that links into rents and housing prices as well. There's deep entrenched dynamics within our economy that the government is attempting to alleviate through temporary migration. So these are the deep, I guess, entrenched issues that we need to be talking about, because these are political decisions. So within the Green Party, making sure that we remove that work visa being tied to a single employer, fully funding the immigration of New Zealand to make sure that these accreditation checks are being implemented. So we are protecting those who come in here to work. And of course, the migrant exploitation visa, having that expanded to 12 months, 6 months is quite a tight space to find work. So these aren't just from the Green Party. This is in consultation with migrants. This is a consultation with community groups who work directly with migrant exploitation. That's the type of politics that you can vote for when you vote for the Green Party. It's not simply just the policy you're voting for. You're voting for the approach of politics that you'd like. So that collaborative ground level approach is the things that we've seen create outcomes. And that is the approach we need going forward.
Also, protection of the fundamental rights of the migrants and fundamental protection of the migrants' engagement with the government and everything, every organization is the key. I guess, because ultimately they are living here, they are staying here, they are contributing through taxes. So
Yeah.
that needs also to be taken into account. So that's good insight. So Vin, I want to go and jump into your main core policies, which is basically the housing and the climate. But first, let's talk about housing. What are you going to or proposing to do anything with regard to the housing affordability or with regard to the building more houses, state houses, making sure everybody has got a roof on their head, just like we want to eradicate poverty, I guess
Mm.
we would like to have a roof on everyone's head, basically. So what sort of policies do you have to tackle those dynamics that we are currently facing?
Mm. Yeah,
Whether
so I guess first and foremost, it is about making sure the funding for Kāinga Ora to continue expanding the social housing to meet the demand of the social housing waitlist, as well as the future demand that we're seeing going forward as the population increases. So it's just those basic principles that deserve funding. So when it comes to the different parts of housing, whether it be the medium density that I'm currently living in right now. So, you know, this is the type of housing. So me as a working professional living with two other working professionals, this is the type of housing that is affordable, works well in terms of our proximity to public transport, and being able for it to be warm and dry. These are the dynamics that go into, a person like myself or working professionals who want to come into Aotearoa work, etc. But also just making sure social housing as well. So in my full-time work, I'm currently in Te Matawai. So it is a new social housing project. It's about 200 to 300 single units for social housing. And within that, you're looking at, support services that provide that wraparound service for individuals who have perhaps been in emergency housing or on the housing wait list. And when they go into a space of social housing, recognizing that part of housing policy, it's not just the house, it's the environment as well. So what is the environment around, and that holistic thinking, we can look into housing policy that recognizing the broad needs of those who are interacting with housing. And this is something I guess I work in day out. I guess what we see with a lot of politicians is that they will simply talk about something without actually working or living it, and therefore don't understand the deep complexities within the space. If we are able to prioritize the voices of those who work in the space, who have that lived experience, we will achieve more outcomes that will actually alleviate those issues. I think there's a lot of, opportunistic narrative when it comes to social housing, but that lack of understanding of what those realities are, how deeply entrenched these issues is. And it's just when it comes to hierarchy of needs, housing is the top one.
Absolutely.
Housing is, if you wanted to talk about alleviation of crime, housing is a huge aspect of that. So what I experienced as a community support worker is if an individual had an interaction with the justice system, has all of a sudden gone to court, and then perhaps through that process have lost their house and now have to go into another emergency housing network. Housing is such a deep factor of the instability that drives a lot of the outcomes we see in criminal justice as well. So therefore, that's why Te Matawai, this project, is so special, because a lot of the individuals that perhaps I was working with in the community space out south are now in this space here. And you'll be amazed to see the change when you provide proper permanent housing. That's the investment. And I feel that needs to be, that consciousness of you invest in public housing, the cost to our justice system, the costs into our health system are alleviated, as well as them being facilitated in their own journey of healing as well. Housing is about, so housing just goes into everything, I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. And I think housing is the key, but also because we have got, as you said, we want to eradicate poverty, and poverty is also one of the causes is the housing because they don't have that
Mm.
luxury or affordability. And that's where we are trying to resolve lots of things in terms of getting those things together, but also giving the people their fundamental rights and entitlements. So in terms of that, and this is attached to housing is also attached to climate change.
Mhm.
And the reason I want to dwell on the climate policy that you guys have in terms of recent floods and all sorts of things that are happening, which natural disasters and all in New Zealand, which we never saw in Auckland particularly, and the dynamics of that has affected the whole country.
Mhm.
What's your goals and what are your continuation of what you had started long time back with regard to climate policies and investments in lots of different projects to control the climate issues? But also, I think one of the thing I wanted to know, and from your green, you being standing for the climate and green being green,
Mhm.
what sort of awareness projects or you guys are doing to create awareness right from the childhood, right from the school when the kids are little, that climate is inevitable, climate needs to be taken care of? Is there anything something like that, just like when you do school lunches or free lunches for school kids,
Yeah.
but those kids also should be made aware of the climatic awareness of the way they live in this social environment, in this environment? Is there anything that you guys are planning to do on that front?
Yeah, so I guess from the broad perspective, when it comes to climate change, it's just about if we want to get our emissions to net zero by 2030 because of the Paris climate deal that we have signed up to. So it is something that we are obligated to. That is I think first off, that is a $30 billion bill that is coming up in 2030 if we're unable to meet those that agreement. So therefore, simply by making it law, we already have legislation. It's about strengthening that. It's about making sure that all industries are playing at the same level and having that same collective responsibility of getting us to net zero. So from a broad level policy perspective, that's what needs to be done.
Sure.
In terms of answering your question, Shailesh, on school programs and the community projects. So me as a candidate within a certain electorate, such as Roskilde, we have been working really hard within our communities to, and don't forget, I guess, like for me as someone who already has a full-time job, to coordinate and concept out, okay, what is climate resilience within a community that we can showcase and build out together. What we managed to do is build out Marakai, and that is in partnership with the New Zealand Ethnic Women's Trust, as well as the new kaupapa called the Regenerative Army, who are urban regenerative farmers. So it's been a very fascinating process of a few months now of urban farmers, New Zealand Ethnic Women's Trust in collaboration to create Marakai infrastructure. Now, this is a small project, but it speaks to so many things.
Sure.
Because when it came to those March floods, I was one of those individuals who was flooded out completely, had to find myself a new home. And then we were up and down Roskilde, going door to door, finding out who needs the clean out, who needs food. So there was that process back in March. And now we're still seeing, I think, a lot of that damage today because a lot of the soil is still clogged. And therefore, through this process of Marakai, we're able to heal that soil back up. Flood infrastructure can be regenerative, nature-based. And I think that is a consciousness that we need to implement. So within the community, that's what the mahi we've been doing, but also in our partnerships with schools as well. So composting, rubbish pickups, making sure that we're providing collective consciousness for kids within schools. That is the mahi that we can provide and facilitate without our capacity as a candidate. It's our responsibility to showcase what politics can look like within a community. And I'm really proud to say, even coming into the end of this election, these are the things that we built up. And these are things that will continue post this election as well.
Right. No, that's great insight, Suveen. That's great. I really appreciate your time, and this is really a good conversation that we had. And as you can see, all the listeners, that is a person who wants to make a difference by the policies of various means, not just one, but also what is the burning issues of current cost of living, and then housing, and then inequalities of too much inequalities in our country has ballooned up. So, but they are tackling with lots of different policies, as you can see. And I think that's something that definitely all the listeners are listening. And so before, when you go, take an informed decision about all political parties. So, Suveen, I would like you to give a final message to all the listeners about the process that your party is going to be, and why they should vote for you, or why they should vote for the Green policies and Green Party policies. Give us some final message of yours to the audience.
Yeah, in terms of the final message, I'd say to look at the extent of the work that needs to be done. We do have independent commissions that have outlined how much of that work needs to be done when it comes to the Productivity Commission or infrastructure deficit of 200 billion, the Climate Commission providing us with that $30 billion bill that's coming up in 2030. We know the scale of work that needs to be done. Now, in terms of the Green Party policy, it is addressing what independent entities have already outlined in terms of the realities that need to be done. So when you are voting for the Green Party, in terms of politically, it's not just the policy. The policy gives you an insight in how we problem solve and look at society's issues. But what's more important, I feel, is the approach of governance, the approach of how we connect with our communities, the approach of how we are showcasing what politics can be. Because this world is so dynamic, we don't know what's coming around in 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now. We need more people within governance roles that had that Green Party values and principles and analysis as well. Like you said, Shayla, you know, that economic, holistic knowledge. So when it comes to your party vote, it is about the type of political work that you'd like to see. It's about the type of politics that you'd like to see. It's the type of governance approach that you'd like to see in those decision-making spaces and in those influential spaces.
Yes.
So that's what I'd say in terms of what your Green Party vote translates into. And that's why I would say a Green Party vote is a pretty good choice, I'd say. But I'd also recommend policy.nz to do some non-partisan research as well.
Excellent, excellent. So listeners, you can see what Suveen has mentioned, that yes, there are lots of things and lots of dynamics at stake at this point, but Green Party is standing by their own values, principles, but also giving you the opportunity and options to actually look into it before you cast your vote. So it's not something that he's saying, just vote for me, but he's pretty much making a point that, you know, the lots of things are there that they are already engaging yourself with the governments, with the governance and compliances, but also trying to make a difference to many, many aspects of what we are facing currently. So please do that extra care of indulging yourself into the policies, because policies is what something every political party comes up with. And it is up to you to decide what's the policies make a difference to you and to your family and to your communities and to everything around you, because that's where we thrive as a party, as every community, that we will thrive with these policies when it gets actually implemented. So once again, Suveen, thank you, Manager, for coming and giving us this beautiful conversation for NZ World News. And I thank you with this. And to all the listeners, please do write to us and please do let us know if you have any questions with regard to Green Party policies. Happy to forward it to Suveen and then he can answer all your questions. But also, please take deep interest before you cast your vote. But main thing, cast your vote. Don't sit there and say, I don't want to vote because I don't like this or I like this, but just vote. Basically, that's your important point message I want to say. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I guess in terms of, just to speak to the apathy that people have for politics is something that I can resonate with. I know it can be a frustrating dynamic, but the unfortunate thing is these decisions will be made regardless. The funds will be allocated regardless, whether you engage in the system or not. If any individual looks at their paycheck and you see that PAYE, that is your funds that is going towards the system that you are voting for. So there is still, whether you choose to engage with it or not, it will still be allocated. The decisions will still be made. So it's important for us to engage in it in a way that resonates with us and with the people that resonate with what we want to see.
Very well said, Suveen, very well said. This PAY is really close to my business term and my accounting and financial background as well. It resonates because that's what people don't understand. They only think that PAY is deducted from us, but where does it go? And you said very well that. So because it is spent somewhere, your own money is spent on you, and you got to realize and made aware yourself, where does this money go? So where do you want that to go? As Suveen rightly mentioned. Thank you once again for that beautiful last statement that you made. With that note, I once again thank you, Suveen, for coming and sharing your views and giving us the insights of your party visions, but also putting some and talking about some of the policies we touched on. We would like to have more in detailed depth about the other financial aspects that impacts in this cost of living. And we would like to take this further with the cost of living area topic in our next episode. So watch for it. Thank you so much once again, Suveen. Bye for now. All the listeners, take care.
Good, everyone.